Hello everybody, welcome back. In this video we're going to learn how to make a 3D section rendering from Revit and then doing a little bit of Photoshop to make it look real nice. Now if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Also hit the like button, it helps me out a lot with how YouTube's algorithms work for showing videos and getting it out to more people. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to go and open up Revit, and in Revit I have a 3D view of a structure that was created, and if you want to create this, I have another video on it. It's two parts on getting started guide for Revit. It's a Autodesk publication in 2015, and so I'm going to go to my 3D view here, and what I've done is I've right clicked and I did duplicate view duplicate, so I have a copy of the 3D view, and then from here I right click on the view cube and say orient to view, floor plan, and you can choose any floor plan. And what this does is it brings up your crop box. That's one way to show it. Otherwise, you can also get to it from the properties. And then in the crop box, you click on it, and you just raise that all the way up, raise it all the way down, and then from the side, you go and slice through your model to where you're happy with what view is being generated, and then orient your by holding on shift and clicking your mouse wheel, just orbit to a nice view. And I like to drop mine low enough where it kind of looks like you're looking at it from the ground level. And then you can click on your crop box, right click hide in view elements, so that way it goes away. Now you'll see the background on my screen is kind of like this gradient sky. To change that to a nice white background, we click on this cube right here, go to hidden line, and then from there click on that again and go to graphic display options. And we're going to choose the background to be you can say none, or you can choose like a color and just white, but I'm going to say none and apply. Okay, now that we have this, we need three different views. Actually, there's one other thing to do. Hit VV on your keyboard, and that brings up a shortcut. And then we're going to say all, and we're going to go down to the cut pattern. Just click on any box that's not grayed out. Say override cut pattern, and choose the pattern to be solid fill, and choose the color to be black. Say OK, and then do the same thing on the background, solid fill and black. OK. Now that we have this, say OK, say apply, say OK, and this does a nice poche on anything that was cut in our project. And here you see that I have this kind of conflict of surfaces going on here, so I got to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to click on that. I have a generic floor. If I hit tab, I have a building pad, and so I might have to right click and hide my building pad element in the view, and then I'm going to come back and dip that back in, so that way it looks like I'm looking at this from the ground level. Okay, now with this perspective that I like, I'm going to not orbit or zoom anymore. I'm done with that. I'm going to only make copies of this view. So this first one here is going to be called, right click, rename, hidden line shadows. This will be the top view that I have, and I need to delete out some of my old ones so that way I don't get confused. Okay, so I have hidden line shadows, and then I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to duplicate view, duplicate, and remember I'm not going to orbit, pan, or zoom. I'm going to keep this exact view. This is very important. And then from here I'm going to turn off my shadows, hitting that button. I'm going to right click and rename this one, hidden line no shadows. And that's going to become my selection layer in Photoshop. And then there's one more view that we need. Now the view that we need is going to be a rendering. So we can actually just go up to view, the view tab, click on render, and for rendering we're going to just put on draft for right now for this demo, but you could change it to a nicer quality so that way your textures shine light off of them and reflect them as the properties are on your materials. So that will be kind of nice, and your rendering is going to be your base view in Photoshop, and you'll see what I mean later. So I'm going to go, and I could do printer quality, and I could jack this up to like 600 dpi, but since I'm doing this kind of fast for a demo, I'm just going to do my screen quality. And then I don't have any interior lights, so I'm just doing exterior sun, but you could do exterior sun and artificial, so if you had interior lights that would add that into it. If you want to do a nighttime rendering, you want to do artificial only, interior artificial only, and then it'll just shine light through your building. It'll look really cool. And then my background, I want to choose, I could do color, and I could do just white, or I could choose transparent. And then I'm going to say render. It's going to go through the process of rendering. It's going to be fast in my case because I chose draft and screen quality. However, remember, you can upgrade that. And so it's going to go through and shoot that thing across. So here's my rendering base view. And then I say save to project. So I have my rendering saved to project. I'm just going to name it 3D section render, and I'm going to name it 2 because I have 2 of them. And then I'm going to choose export as well. However, you can also adjust your exposure here if you wanted to, and you'll see like different things update if you hit apply. I'm going to leave it as is and then say export. There's a lot of those settings that I can also do in Photoshop. So I'm going to say export, and I'm going to export this just to my, my desktop and save it. Okay, so now that I have this, well, I'm going to export it to one more location actually. So give me 1 second. And let's see. All right, so I have a area I can save it to here, and this was my 3D section. Render, and say save. And now I'm going to X out of this. I'm going to do the same thing with the other views. So I'm going to go to my hidden line, no shadows. I go up to File. I'm going to say Export. And from here, I'm going to go down to Images and Animations, Image. And I'm going to change this file name to hidden line, no shadow selection. Say fit to 2000 pixels, and then I choose lossless. Those are my settings, and say OK. And then I'm going to do hidden line shadows. I'm going to do the same thing. File, export, images and animations, image, and we're going to do the same settings, same spot, and rename this one hidden line shadows. And this is my top layer. And then same qualities, 2000 pixels, lossless, lossless. Okay. All right, now that we have this, let's open up Photoshop. So with Photoshop open, to open up a new file, we're going to go to File, we're going to go to New, and we're going to choose a 17 by 11 inch, 300 pixels per inch, RGB color. This is good for digital. This is good for quality if we were to print it. If you wanted this to be purely for printing, you'd choose CMYK, but I like to do a mix of 300 DPI and then RGB. And then this is 11 by 17, very common for a portfolio size. And we'll name this 3D section demo and say OK. All right, now that we have this, now I have a little bit older version of Photoshop, but same kind of command. So File, you might see Place Embedded. That's the same thing as Place. Click on Place, and I'm going to place my hidden line no shadow selection. I'm going to say Place, and see that comes in. I'm not going to change anything about where this is positioned. I'm going to keep it right as is and just hit Enter. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Place. Yours might say Place Embedded, and then I'm going to choose hidden line shadows top. Place right on top. Place it. That's right on top. And then I'm going to throw in my rendering right in between the two. So I'm going to go to File, Place, 3D section render. Which one is it? I guess we'll be able to find out. It's this one, I think. Place. And so now I hit Enter. Now it comes in a little smaller, so we're going to change the opacity on it so you can see that. I'm going to change it to like 40% opacity. And you're going to see that this rendering comes in a little bit smaller, so we need to align it. And so I'm going to put it kind of over this, and then if I hold Control T, then I can change this. Now I have to hold down Shift to lock my proportion as I go and make this larger. So I'm going to go and drag this a little bit larger and get it so that way I can place it directly on top of my other drawing. So it takes a little bit of time to finesse this, but it'll be worth it for the outcome in the end if you spend a little extra time making sure that it's properly sized and that you're holding down shift when you do change its size to make sure everything lines up nicely. And one more time here, small adjustments. Okay, and for my demo that's pretty close, so I'm going to hit enter on that. Now the 3D section render I'm going to throw underneath the shadows, and there's some settings here. The shadows layer I have selected. I'm going to choose the opacity to be about 40, and the shadows layer I'm going to also change to a multiply effect. 3D section render, we're going to change that back to 100 now that it's the right size. We can kind of see how the shadows affect that now. And then with the selection layer down below, this is just purely for selection, so we don't have to change much on it. See what happens with the magic wand tool. I can use the selection layer to select this nice box. However, if I was on 3D section render and I try and use the magic wand in the same area, it doesn't know what to do because there's no real solid line separating the spaces. So the magic wand, if I have the selection layer on and then I use the magic wand, you'll see that it selects these areas really nice for me. And that's how we can have a little bit of control over our project going forward. Control D to deselect. Okay, I'm going to go and save this real quick and call it 3. Okay, now with this we need to bring in a sky if we want. We can bring in people, we can kind of upgrade our ground. So I'm going to keep it simple for the video. Just know if you bring in a sky, you would throw it behind the 3D section render, so that way it comes in nice in the background. I'm going to clean up with a polygon lasso tool right here, polygon lasso. I'm going to make a layer that's right on top of the 3D section render. We're going to call this ground. And this ground layer, I'm going to use the polygon lasso to just kind of draw over and around the ground here, and I'm going to draw it beyond the page and close it off. And with this we can go to the paint bucket and we'll just choose like a nice black and drop in that paint, Control D to deselect, and now we have our ground for this rendering. And now we're going to go and throw in some people, and so that will be underneath the hidden lines shadow. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Place, and I have a bunch of people here, and so I'm going to click on that and say Place, and the layer comes in like this, and I'm going to find someone that I like for a person. I'm going to just hit enter, and these people, let's see, I want, let's say, this person here. So I'm going to just highlight them, and then Control J jumps them. So if I turn off this people layer, you'll see that I still have this person. Apply the transformation. I'm going to highlight around them. I'm going to hit delete, Control D, and then I'm going to delete that too, Control D. And then I'm going to do on this person, I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to invert the image so that way it's white. And then this person's rather kind of large for this one, so I'm going to do Control T and bring them down to size a little bit. Enter. I'm having a really hard time selecting this person and moving them around, so I might have to just make a box around them to move the box. Oops. And place them in a different spot. Alright, hit enter, Control D. Okay, so I have a person on there, and then now what I'm going to do here, and what's next, is I'm going to bring in a tree in the background, and then I'm going to make a little bit of a light here inside the building. So to place a tree, kind of same process, File, Place, and I have a Photoshop file of a tree, so Place, and this tree here I'm going to just throw right here, and it's pretty large, so I'm going to just make it a little bit smaller, holding down Shift to keep the proportion, and I'm just going to place this right here and hit enter. And now I want it behind the building, so I'm just going to drop that tree behind my 3D section render. The 3D section render, we're going to change to a multiply effect. Actually, I'm going to keep it normal. Now the trees behind it, so this 3D section render has some white borders that I don't want. So if I select that with my magic wand tool, which you just saw, then if I right click on 3D section render on the text, I can go to rasterize layer. I can press the delete button, and that deletes out the white that I had selected, then Control D to deselect. So now I have this tree in the background. And then what I can do here is add in some lights and mess with the shadows a little bit. These people I'm going to throw at the bottom, the ones I had imported in. And this person I'm going to put underneath the shadows as well. Now you can see how the shadows are affecting this person a little bit. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is go and throw in some lighting. So I'm going to go and create a new layer. And this new layer I'm going to place right underneath the shadows layer for right now. I'm going to name it lighting. And here's how we can do our lighting. So we have maybe this angle the sun's coming in, it's casting a shadow, but we think it might cast some light down here in the project. So I'm going to use the polygon selection tool. I'm going to reference kind of where this is coming in, kind of as it would hit inside the building and kind of through the glass. And so thinking about that, I'm going to try that one more time. Think about that, it might land about here. Kind of fill this light well. I'm just going to kind of click roughly around these mullions. If you want to zoom in, you can hold down Alt and scroll your mouse wheel. So I guess I'll show that. I guess you have to do it when you're not on the polygon tool. Control plus you can do while you're on the polygon tool. Go and place that in. And now with that, I'm going to do Control minus to zoom out. I can choose a brush. So I'm going to go to a brush here. And I'm still on this lighting layer. And I have this selection box. I'm going to choose like a fuzzy brush. And then I'm going to switch to a white. And I can go and drop in, you know, like a little bit of this, a little bit of sunlight here. I could edit, undo, and use the bracket keys above, kind of near the enter button, to make it a lot bigger. And drop in a little bit bigger thing of light. And then what I do is I go up to opacity, and I can change that to about 30. And then you kind of have this Control D, this like kind of hard light coming in on the top, so you can kind of read that it's coming in off this edge, and then it kind of fades out. So I think this provides kind of a cool lighting option. Okay, now that I have sunlight coming in, and I have my person, I have a tree in the background, we're pretty much well on our way to a nice 3D section rendering. Make sure you save your work. So I'm going to go and export this thing as a Photoshop PDF. However, if you want to throw in skies or birds or even add more lighting options throughout, so you can go and mess around with this a lot further. But to kind of finish this thing off, you just go to File, Save As, and you would choose a Photoshop PDF. And by saving this as a Photoshop PDF, a lot of other people can access this. In order to reduce the file size, uncheck layers, save it as a copy. You won't be able to edit this in like Photoshop layers afterwards, but you have the Photoshop file to do that. So the PDF then can be a little bit of a smaller size, so it sends in an email a little bit better to clients or what have you. And so now that this whole thing's saved, I uncheck Preserve Photoshop editing capabilities on this PDF, once again to make it a smaller file size. Then you're all good. You now know how to do a 3D section rendering. Use a little bit of Revit and a little bit of Photoshop and a little bit of finesse. Once again, if you liked the video, make sure to save and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.